Welcome to the Amen Podcast, where all men from all walks of life, backgrounds, and ages can obtain the tools on how to become alpha men from a Christ-centered perspective in today's society. Here's your host, Jimmy Greer.
All right. Well, I'll tell you this. I've been really blessed with some of my guests that have come on the show. People that I personally am very surprised that they would even agree to come on our little show that we've got going on here at Amen Podcast. But today it was in lieu of it was a connection that we had with one of our previous guests. And today I just want to welcome Fresno County Sheriff John Zanoni. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm so glad that you're here. It's exciting because a lot of the questions that I run into, guys on the streets, friends, and things of that nature is, different scenarios with how we operate with a CCW, firearms in general, home safety, awareness on the street, and even, of recent, we have a lot of issues that are taking place in our state. I don't think that people really grasp or kind of understand your voted position. You have as much authority as the governor. Now, granted, you have different powers, but you run your county. Nobody's going to tell you how to run your county. That's it. That's the bottom line. But before we get there, I just want to get some backdrops on you, if we can. Where'd you go to school? Where'd you?
I grew up in Fresno.
Okay.
I went to San Joaquin Memorial High School.
Okay.
And then I attended Fresno State. And after Fresno State, I started my career at the Fresno County Sheriff's Office.
Oh, wow. So you just went right into it.
Right into it.
Did you go to academy, or how was your avenue?
So I did the reserve program with the Sheriff's Office through a class at Fresno State called the Criminology 108 program.
Okay.
And then you're reserved for about a year or so. And then I went to the Police Academy, which is over at State Center at Community College, and graduated and started full-time with the Sheriff's Office in 1998.
Fantastic. By the way, if anybody's questioning, did you absolutely have voted for you? 100%.
Okay.
100%. Just so we get that one cleared out.
Well, thank you.
So now you're doing life, right? You're getting yourself established, and you obviously have wife and kids, right?
Yep.
How long you guys been married?
Going on 21 years coming this May.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And kids?
3 kids,
Three
yes.
kids. Okay. All right. So college, high school?
All teenagers right now.
Ooh.
For a very short period of time, I have all teenagers in the house, 19, 16, and 13.
I have 4. I'll tell you this. I think that all teenagers are terrorists, personally. I think they are. They ruin your house. They break your stuff. And at the end of the day, they walk out and they just go, yeah, you know what? Who cares about the electric bill? I don't care. I'm not paying for it, right?
Sometimes it does happen. You come home and you're like, why is the air conditioning on 70 and there's nobody home? Who was the last one to leave?
Right.
For the most part, though, my kids, they're good. Sometimes you got to remind them to clean up and do this or take out the trash, but that's just part of being a teenager.
Yeah, it is. It's growing up. It's being life, learning responsibilities and how it goes. So, you're cooking along here. You're doing life. You're getting married. You got kids going. And then, you're continuing to operate in this career as our acting and serving sheriff. So I think that one of the topics that I kind of want to get to in this episode is we as leaders, as fathers, we're a leader before anything else if we have a wife and we have kids. Right? We have influence in that. Correct?
Absolutely.
Right. In our careers, specifically in yours, you have a much broader reach of influence because you have to, of the nature of your job. With that responsibility, I don't know if you were familiar with the term sheepdog.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Absolutely a sheepdog. And people don't understand this mentality. And when you start talking about this mentality in certain groups, people can get a little trigger and little weird about it because they think it's overstepping that God-given ability to be masculine and be that leader. And what I don't think happens in this growth period of men when we start out, we get a family going, we start doing these things, start doing life, is we kind of lose track of that swivel moment, right? Of that sheepdog mentality and being aware, being not overly protective, but being protective in a standpoint. If you're walking out and you're out in a night with your family, whatnot, you're just doing your thing.
Right.
You just suspect, hey, things are good for the most part. Most people are decent. I find myself on the other end of that stick, whereas I'm like, okay, why is this person standing there? That's really, really weird. It's summertime and they got a big park on. That doesn't make sense to me. Guy with a certain kind of backpack. Those things, kind of stick out at me.
Well, absolutely. But I think for your average, we'll call them non-law enforcement, non-military type person, you don't always see that. You're not always picking up those warning signs, what we call like those red flags.
Right.
I think when you're, especially in law enforcement, from me, like I'll go out somewhere and you try to turn it off, but your hypervigilance mode is you're never really going to turn it off completely. And I'll say something or, and my kids will pick up on it. Like, oh, Dad, hey, check out that guy. And I'm like, oh, yeah, perfect, right on. Yeah, that looks like somebody who's up to no good.
Right.
And so, but really that awareness of your surroundings is important because we never know, like, you never know when something bad is going to happen. It just is, and that's why a lot of people get CCWs is because they want to be prepared to protect themselves, their family, and their friends if the situation ever arises. For 99.9% of our CCW holders, that situation or that moment will never come.
Yeah.
They are prepared and they'll be prepared, but for that one time, and I do understand, that our CCW holders have a certain level of training because they go through the classes and everything else. But really, it's important because bad things can happen in a snap of a finger, a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So having that hypervigilance, having that sort of sheepdog mentality, it's important to protect for your own safety and for the safety of your family. Right. And a lot of times when we talk about law enforcement, we talk about the sheepdog. As law enforcement officers, you are like the sheepdog. You're out there protecting the sheep from the wolves who are the criminals, the predators, the people who are trying to, victimize them.
100%. I also think, and I don't know if this statistic number is still accurate, but last I heard was 34% of the state's CCW holders live in Fresno County. Is it less or higher? Or am I
think it might be a little bit less than that. Some of the other areas have picked up a little bit.
Yeah.
But we still have about 15,000 CCW holders here in Fresno County, at least through our office. I don't know how many the Fresno
city.
Police Department has in the city.
Yeah.
But it's a good number of folks. And we were always very aggressive and user-friendly, I will say, pro-CCW about issuing them, where some places they weren't that way. They were really making people jump through the hoops, and they were very strict about who they issued them to.
Now, a lot of people may or may not understand the authoritative powers that are vested in your position in your department. If you can kind of paint that landscape of what that looks like for you in comparison to sheriff and governor, those powers that be that you can operate in.
So I don't know about all the powers of the governor, but I know, like, for sheriff, like, we run the jail. If you look at, there's some civil code within our laws in California. There's certain things that elected people like this. I can conduct a legal wedding. I can legally marry you in the state of California as a sheriff. I've done one. Yes.
Wow.
So running a jail, we run the courts. Some people look at, like, our civil unit. We do all the evictions. The city of Fresno, the city of Clovis, those police departments, they don't do evictions. That is a job, it's like a constitutional job of the sheriff.
Right.
The sheriff is a constitutional office. So there are things that it's kind of a slippery slope.
Okay.
So people ask me, like, well, as sheriff, you have all these powers. And they talk about Sheriff Mack, who was down in Texas. I'm sure you heard of him.
Yes.
And he was a constitutional sheriff. But I don't think he lasted in office very long. And I said, while you have those constitutional powers, you still have to get reelected.
Yes.
So you can't go crazy off the reservation,
right?
With this pounding your fist and I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I've had people come up to me and ask me, like, why can't we just do open carry? Constitution, can you just carry a gun?
Yeah.
And I said, well, we have a CCW process, and that's probably the best way to do it because people do need some training and
Yes.
some hands-on experience before we let them walk around with guns because
Yes.
that could get bad.
Dicey.
But issuing CCWs, we have the authority to issue CCWs within the county of Fresno. You know, at any time, if some of the incorporated cities, unincorporated cities, if they need law enforcement services, we can go in and provide that for them because we are the sheriff of the county. So we do have a more authority as a sheriff. We have more jurisdiction. And like, take for instance, Fresno County, we're the sheriff, coroner, and public administrator.
Okay.
So we run the public administrator's office, which typically deals with a lot of like when people die and probate and estates and things like that. And then our coroner's office. We're a county of 1.1 million people. So we're doing, you know, hundreds of forensic examinations or what you call autopsies a year, examining probably over 1,000 deceased persons in some manner or another, and then processing all the paperwork for death certificates, regardless of how they died or where they died within Fresno County. So it's a huge responsibility. On top of, we run the jail, which can hold about 3,000 incarcerated persons. Currently, we run the Fresno County Courthouse, which is all the superior and municipal courts that are all into one downtown, and then all the detective units, and then what we provide as far as patrol that you see out there with our patrol cars out in the community.
And I knew about the courts in that part, but some of the other things, that's pretty informative. But I'm also wondering too, is there's questions out there because when it's different, you know, from a in law enforcement and non-law enforcement kind of conversation, right? We both know that. But trying to bridge that gap because CCW holders as a whole, in my opinion, and I don't speak for them, I'm just saying the feel that I get is there's a sense of responsibility and community in that. No, we are not acting like law enforcement. We know we're not law enforcement or any of those things, but we know that the responsibility of what we're carrying on ourselves is no different than an officer. Now, do the laws change? Are they different for law enforcement versus civilian? 100% they are.
Yes, they are.
They're 100%. And I want to be very clear about that. But I think if people understand, you know, what their limitations are and how they properly can operate in that and maneuver around the state, I think that we're going to be a better community of CCW holders and responsible people. That's the hope. That's the gauge. So to kind of redirect the question is, so when you are in every situation is different. You can't, you know, summarize in broad paint a situation.
Right.
But this situation we were talking about earlier was a variable. This was in the pre-show, and we were talking about this gentleman down in LA County.
Yeah, Mr. Ricci.
Yes. Yeah. And so the basis of the situation is that he's walking into his home. There's video on this. He's defending against three assailants, three attackers, and he gets his license temporarily. Well, they said temporary, but he hasn't returned. They haven't given his CCW back.
Right.
So, but this is a thing that even I did know, which you addressed earlier, is so he is issued in LA County, but he had, you know,
a residence within the city of LA.
Correct. And so there's a lot of us that are in that situation. Yes, we're in the county, but we live in the city. So according to how that response is going to be to that particular situation, how do you approach that as sheriff?
So we just issue a lot of CCWs. Take, for instance, here in Fresno County, the city of Clovis, the police department does not issue CCWs. Yeah. And the city of Fresno, the police department does issue CCWs, but not nearly to the volume that we do.
Correct.
So we have a lot of CCW holders, that live in the city of Fresno or the city of Clovis. Yeah. That's just normal because the sheriff has the authority within the county to issue them to anyone who shows a primary residence within Fresno County.
Sure.
Now, looking back to Mr. Ricci's case, I don't know all the details. That's my kind of disclaimer here.
Yeah.
But I want people to remember, too, is that when you're on your own property, whether it be in your house or in your front yard, not in the street, that's public, but on your own property, you don't even need a CCW.
Okay.
You could carry a gun on your property. That's your property. And in this case, I know they took it away. Like I said, I don't know all the details. I would think that if I had the same fact pattern here in Fresno County I know he said, for disclosure, he said some disparaging things about LAPD and their investigation.
Sure.
So maybe somebody thought that was not harmonious and
Outside the bounds.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
But the reality is we'd probably take that gun that was used for evidence. You wouldn't have it, just like we do in an officer-involved shooting. When
Correct.
the gun's used, we take it. I think out of the gate, if everything seemed to add up in the preliminary investigation by the officers on scene, I would let him keep his CCW and wait for the deal to play out or the case to play out.
Yeah.
Maybe detectives do some follow-up. He was in L.A. County, so even though he's in the city of L.A.,
Correct.
We all know who the DA was at the time. It was Gascon back then. Is there a possibility that you could get charged with a crime? I mean,
might lean a little harder on this guy.
That's a different world.
Yeah.
I could tell you from talking to folks in Ventura County, when they would have pursuits and deals that would follow over into LA County, they would always remind their people at the time, remember, you're going to another jurisdiction. That's the LA County District Attorney. If something happens,
you got to play by that rule book.
And what is the rule book?
Yeah. Right. And you don't know that until you're in it.
And I don't know if you want to take that chance when you have somebody who is pro-criminal and really anti-law enforcement. Let's be honest about this.
And that's okay to be honest about that. That's why we come on the show. We, not the only reason, but one of the reasons, we look at leadership. We look at, the family unit. We look at our relationship with God. We look at our physical, mental abilities and how to make those stronger. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, was because I have a lot of friends and a lot of people that will tune into this. And one of the biggest statements that really gets me is when somebody says, and I just dip my head and I'm just kind of like, when somebody says, if I have to defend myself, and they say it kind of like jokingly, and they said, well, you shoot him and then drag him in. I'm like, can you really just hold that idiotic thought for just 1 second?
Right.
If you spent any time, going through and burning through a bunch of, cop shows per se, right? You're going to see real quick that forensics is going to beat you like every single time in that situation.
Well, I want to go back to Mr. Ricci's situation, and that is that as a sheriff of Fresno County, I firmly believe in this situation, you're on your own property. You're at your house.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no mistaking that's where you live. You know where you live. These armed people come up to you. I don't care if they're, selling See's candy or whatever the heck they're doing. They're in a threatening manner. You absolutely have the right to defend yourself, and you should defend yourself.
Absolutely.
If it's feasible. And I think that when we question this, or we take Mr. Ricci's CCW permit and we run him through the so-called ringer, what message does that send to the other residents of the city of LA or LA County that, well, wait a second, because remember, as CCW holders, we are good, law-abiding residents of the state of California, the counties, the cities, and everywhere we live. So we have the most to lose. These thugs, these criminals, they have nothing to lose and everything to gain. But now you've put a question mark, you've put hesitation into the mind of someone who lives in that county who may want to defend themselves in a similar situation, because now they're thinking, oh, well, that guy almost got in trouble. They took his CCW.
Yes.
And so it sends the wrong message. And the message we need to send as God-fearing men, as leaders of law enforcement, as leaders of city, county, different governmental entities, is that it's time for good, law-abiding residents and people that are out there to do the right thing to kind of take back the streets and to stop putting up with this, this malarkey that people are selling us. It's time that our quality of life issues need to be addressed by our government leaders and don't need to be hindered through politics.
Right.
And I understand that some of that is very sensitive when we deal with the unhoused and the transient population.
Sure.
But how many times do you, like when we had Prop 36, how many times did I take my kids to stores and they would watch people run out of the stores with merchandise? And I tell you, one time in Big Five in Clovis, I actually chased after him and left my kids in the store. And I got the license plate. I came back to the store. The guy started driving crazy. So I said, this is just, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But the store manager said, oh, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. And I said, I've already called Clovis PD. They're on their way. And I wasn't sheriff then. I was assistant sheriff at the time. And he kind of looked at me and I said, wait a second. How can this be acceptable?
Right.
This is the problem with this. We're giving it implied consent, or, we're saying it's okay because we're the laws aren't there and this and that, but still has to be reported. In our society, we got so far that way. And I think that's literally what it took, though, for 70% of the voters in California to bring back and vote for Prop 36 and put some teeth and some accountability back in the law.
What was I can't remember if it was AB or it was SB bill that kind of got put on the chopping block, and I think it got defeated, and it was where our right to defend ourselves.
It got defeated very quickly.
Yes, because that when those kind of bills come up, which John, is that they scare a lot of people, because what does it scream? It screams, I can't protect my family, I can't protect myself.
What's interesting on that one, I was sitting at a Cal State Sheriff's Conference, Jimmy, and we were talking about it, and our legislative analyst that was there, because it was a hot topic. I mean, we were in Ventura at the time. We were at a Cal State Sheriff's Conference. Every month we meet, and we were talking about it, and our leg analyst said, oh, by the way, the bill's been pulled by the author. And everybody was like, wow, that was quick.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you're dealing with elected sheriffs, so somebody's asking a question. It wasn't me, for the record.
Of course.
And they said, well, how did that happen? Maybe some other words in there.
Yeah.
And he said, the author of the bill, or the one who brought it forward, said, I didn't get a chance to vet and review the bill before I pushed it forward. And he was blaming his staffers for writing it in that manner. And I was like, oh, that's your easy out right there.
Negating it, yeah.
Because I think that bill was going to go down in flames.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
Let's take the partisan, politics out of it. It was going to go down in flames, and I think he saw the writing on the wall, and then he just blamed somebody else.
Of course, a scapegoat. It's easy,
right?
I think that we, as again, back as leaders, fathers, whoever you are that has that influence over people and their safety, I think we need to take these things into consideration, because this state is crazy depending on where you're. I mean, it's crazy, period, but it's crazy depending on where you live.
Right.
If you're in LA County, you're living in a completely different culture and environment all by itself, which we've seen in recent months. And I asked another guest this same question. It was in regards to if you're a police chief over, city of LA at the time that everything broke out with, and I don't call them protests because that's not the way they were. They were riots. Protests is a peaceful march to continue to operate in your constitutional rights as an American citizen.
It's your First Amendment right to speech.
100%. So with that being said, if you're going out, you're burning cars, you're hurting people, you're
throwing mortar blocks at law enforcement officers in uniform, damaging their vehicles.
Yes, burning them on fire, those sorts of things. You're rioting. You're not protesting. That's not what that is. So I like to call it for what it is. So you're in that situation, and you're the sheriff of how to deal with that, because everybody thinks that just because you're in an elected position, you're a police officer, that immediately you're all tied up with ICE and that you guys are all in one ring, and they just don't understand that. So kind of pick that apart a little bit about how ICE is a separate division. You're a separate division of the government and police authorities, and how you kind of operate differently in that.
So ICE is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and their real mission is border security and immigration violations under immigration law.
Yeah.
And as your county sheriff or your police chief, I know a lot of municipalities, especially police departments, they came out immediately. We're not cooperating with ICE. We're not doing anything with ICE. We're not enforcing immigration. We're not doing this. And then you saw kind of the federal government from Trump and D.C. come out saying, well, then we're going to look at you as a sanctuary city.
Correct.
Or whatever. But the reality is that their mission is completely different than ours. Mm-hmm. And I have said this from day one when this started in many different forms, and I've talked to a lot of different people, from people that want to see, you talk to people, I talk to people in the community, from every person that's undocumented is here illegally, they want them gone tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, well, that's your perspective on that. And then you got other people who they want everybody to stay even if they're murderers. Mm-hmm. So But that's ICE's job. Now, how they carry out this duty with, I've been hearing about, people not identifiable jumping out of cars and grabbing people.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of that personally. But our focus is like when they find somebody who's in the custody of our jail and they make the request for a transfer for an ICE hold, Immigration Custom Enforcement hold, if it meets the criteria of the state law, SB 54, which was the one passed in 2017, the Truth and Values Act, we will honor that hold. But our focus is public safety. Our focus is taking care of victims and ensuring that people aren't victimized and that they get justice and that we get our criminals off the streets. And our focus is, we're preventing robberies. We're trying to improve the quality of life for people within certain neighborhoods and certain communities within our county. And we want to make sure that we don't have people just running around stealing rampantly. And that's why our focus is crime.
Yeah.
We are focused on crime and those that commit crimes. Now, you do have people that'll say that those undocumented and here illegally are committing a federal crime, but I don't prosecute federal crimes. That's the United States Department of Justice. It's U.S. Attorney's Office.
Yeah.
That's ICE and everything else. I focus on the California penal codes and what impacts us here locally.
That's a great definition because I think people blur that line. They think it's all grouped together, and because you're law enforcement, so that must mean that you're communicating, you're helping, you're aiding, you're assisting, and that's just not the case because you send in the Army to do a specific job, you send in the Marines to do a specific job, right? You have Fresno County Sheriffs. They operate in a very specific way and entity. It's not all grouped together, and I wanted to define that, so that people have that clear picture that are listening to this, that, it's not about I'm not supporting, I am supporting, or I'm choosing a political side. I'm actually facilitating and operating in the job and the office that I was voted into.
Well, and the other thing, too, is that, we talk about state laws and some sanctuary policies. We talk about SB 54.
Yeah.
And then we talk about what the federal government's doing right now and what they, kind of what they're expecting and their immigration platform and what they're doing with this. But I remind everybody is when I took the oath of office as sheriff, I raised my right hand and I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of California. Unfortunately, with things like SB 54 and with what the federal government's doing, those are kind of opposite, right? They're not necessarily together.
Yeah. Because
when ICE asked me, the federal government side of it, ICE would want to put a detainer and a transfer hold on everyone in my jail who is here illegally or undocumented.
Okay.
But SB 54 state law says they can only do that if it meets this criteria or falls under one of these crimes. So that's where it's a difficult sort of balancing act, juggling act, whatever you want to call it, for the sheriffs, because you're trying to work with the feds, but you're trying not to violate state law.
Absolutely. So it's a balancing act, and you have to interwove how you're going to balance that, because it's got to be a difficult thing. I can't imagine what you would have to go through to do that.
Well, fortunately, when we're dealing with SB 54, things have kind of fallen into place, and they're getting the transfers that they want that comply with SB 54. And I think that as a arm of the federal government, law enforcement, ICE, here in Fresno County, things have been going along pretty well. I know in some other counties like San Francisco and Los Angeles County, the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, has asked for documentation and information related to everybody that's in custody and their custodial facilities, their jails, that's here illegally. So I know that that's a push right now for those two specific counties. And I think part of that relates to the fact that because of the way things have kind of happened and the way that they do business, they've been kind of branded the sanctuary counties in California. And so I think that she's trying to basically say, hey, we want to know. You can't hide them if they're there. We're going to come get them. And it's come to be a bit of a standoff between the federal and the county of L.A. and the county of San Francisco.
Oh, I'm sure.
But now I did hear San Francisco sheriff, who I know pretty well, I think he's going to provide the information.
Really?
Yeah. So,
interesting.
And you kind of have to balance that too, because if you provide the information to the Attorney General of the United States, is that aiding in immigration enforcement, which when you look at SB 54.
But aren't you operating in your purview of your position at that same point, or are you going outside?
But remember, SB 54 is the law that says you will not aid in immigration enforcement. Unless right now, Immigration and Customs Enforcement gets them because they call us and say, "Hey, is John Zanoni in custody?"
Yeah.
Yes. We have information that he's undocumented, and then they say we'd like to place a hold on him. And I'm simplifying it, obviously.
Sure.
And then we will say, "I'm sorry, his charges don't qualify for us to do that for you under SB 54." Or, his charges do, so we'll honor the hold.
Yeah.
And do the transfer. That's
tough.
It's
That's
a little
tough.
confusing. I'm trying to simplify it here for the sake of you and
listeners,
the audience here listening. But it's difficult. But as I always say, Jimmy, it's not politics. It's public safety.
Correct.
That's my job.
Correct.
My job is not to take one political side or the other, although it may look like that. Don't get me wrong. But my job is to focus on what side of the argument or what side of the issue is best for public safety and the residents here in Fresno County. That's what I have to focus on.
You have to make decisions in split second. Sometimes you have longer points to make those decisions, but you also know at the end of that decision, someone is going to be happy and someone is not. At the end of the day, you have to say, I'm going to make this priority of safety for the public my highest priority, and that's it. If it falls on whatever side of viewership of opinion, doesn't matter. And I don't think people really take that into account when they're looking at the broad spectrum of what your position holds and what your department does.
Right.
And I'm very thankful for our Fresno County sheriffs. I really do. I have friends in there that serve under you as well, and very thankful for them. I do want to ask another question too. Is you're out and about. Just give you a scenario. So you're out and about, and we've seen this in its city, granted, but we've seen the rise of protesting, Palestinian protesting, taking over city blocks and things of that nature. And I'll hear conversations of people saying, "Well, you know what? We ought to go down there." And when I say we go down there, I'm talking about people who carry. And I'm just like, okay, listen, if you're going to go down there and be stupid, then you're going to get stupid prizes. That's what's going to happen in that situation. But something turns into something in our environment that really could just happen just like that, like a fire, where you could be downtown and all of a sudden rioters start going up and then it begins to expand. Nobody expected that in LA. It just happened, right? That's the model that I'm talking about. How do we responsibly view that as sheriff and CCW holder and respond to those kinds of situations, in your opinion? If you can,
you have the right to go out and exercise your First Amendment right to freedom of speech, freedom of demonstration, freedom of press, all that.
Yeah.
But just take into account that many times at these riots, so-called protests, people are paid to come in. There's agitators, there's instigators, and things like that. And it kind of goes back to what I told you earlier. CCW holders are the ones that have more to lose. These people don't have a whole lot to lose.
Correct.
And so they're being paid to be here. They're part of Antifa. They're part of other organizations. So I think almost the best case is like, I know I have my kids and other people like, oh, I want to go down there. I want to do this. Whatever, I want to take on this side of it. But really, how many people are actually paying attention to these protesters? Yeah, they're getting a little bit of media attention. But the reality is, I read through a lot of different media posts, and sometimes I'll look even on some sites that not Fox News, but other sites where it's a little more liberal, Democrat, that side of the fence viewership. And it's amazing when you start reading through the comments, people are just like, here's a story like bashing on Trump or saying something about, something that happened in I think it was a Blue Run City, as they like to call it.
Yes.
And they're bashing on Trump. It is on Yahoo. But you read the comments, even the readers are like, these people are in the wrong, Trump's in the right. So I think sometimes don't go out looking for a fight when you're a CCW holder, because we can all go out and get in a fight. Fights
easily.
I mean, go out and get, not get in a fight.
Yeah.
But I think what the focus should be is to talk to your friends and neighbors and really educate them on, talk about what's going on and really look at how we're going to vote in the next election, how we're going to make positive changes. Because I can read the headline now. You and I go out to a protest, take the other side of it, and it turns into like a full-blown riot.
Yes.
People are arrested and problems happen. And they're going to say, oh, that crazy Jimmy Greer and the Fresno County Sheriff were out there.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. Since we're on the Amen podcast here, I'm hoping this will be okay for the show.
It'll go.
So we had a big press conference. Myself, the DA, were not involved in it.
Okay.
And it was regarding the boys participating in girls track and field at the state championship at Buchanan.
That recent, yes.
And you had many of our local elected leaders who were out there voicing their opposition to it. And I talked to a lot of people, and I think a lot of people agreed that was wrong. That should not have happened. These boys should not be competing against girls.
Correct.
Firmly believe that 100%.
Me as well.
So you had some folks that came out, and they were protesting in favor of the boy competing against the girls.
Correct.
With their flag out there, and some people were driving by Buchanan High School, Veterans Stadium over there. And at one point, the guy's driving by, and he is against boys and girls sports, which I honestly think 95% of the people are
correct
on that side of the fence. And he said something to one of the protesters and was struck with a flag. Okay. The protester was arrested for assault, and this individual was the victim. I don't think he got seriously injured, but the individual came into custody of our jail, and we had to house them, and they claimed a different gender than they were, so they had to be housed specially. But my point is even though I firmly believed in what many of our local leaders were doing, I didn't go over there and voice my opinion, because now, just follow me on this.
Yeah.
I say this shouldn't happen. This is wrong. These boys shouldn't be competing. It's wrong. I'm not going to stand for this. This individual gets booked into my jail. Let's say they get assaulted or something bad happens to them. Now someone's going to say, oh, well, of course something bad happened to him. The sheriff was out there on TV saying A, B, C, and D, that he didn't approve this, he didn't like this, he didn't support this. So sometimes, even though you believe something, sometimes you have to be measured in your approach as to how, because that could come full circle on you.
Absolutely.
And that person ended up being out of Burbank or Glendale, California.
They came to the area.
They came here for this.
Yeah.
And had some associations to Antifa.
Oh, wow.
So those are the kind of people that are coming into our area to incite or agitate in these protests. And I think you've probably heard that many of them, not this case, but other ones down there in LA, have military training, and they kind of, I was hearing they were encircling ICE agents. They were baiting them in to come in and then encircling them down there in an area near a Home Depot where ICE was staging or having some briefing and having a little office. So we have to be careful.
Correct.
And that's why I think that when people came after me and said, well, why would the sheriff support bringing the National Guard in against the protesters in LA? I said, well, again, it's not political, but if they're burning patrol cars, throwing bricks, assaulting law enforcement officers, and they're closing down freeways that we need, that are public, paid for by taxes, that we rely on to get from point A to point B to even provide public safety personnel, we have to do something.
Right.
We cannot just let this lawless chaos continue. And so that's why I supported it. Regardless of what they were protesting, to me, that's like, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You could be out there protesting, protesting, we'll call it, something, and it could be the worst cause in the world.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it legally, lawfully, you're not harming anybody else, and you're not assaulting people in like that,
that's your right to do that.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So am I.
But when you get to this extreme, I don't care if you're protesting or rioting for something that actually I believe in. You can't do that. Yeah. It can't be tolerated, because if we let it go, then what's to stop the next group for this cause from doing this, or this group from doing this? and we're going to have freeways closed down. We're spending all kinds of tax money, and we're putting a lot of good law enforcement officers in harm's way. This stuff, we have to show that when it gets to the riot and it goes past the protest, it's not going to be tolerated.
Correct. And that was the crux of what I wanted to get to, was because most people don't realize that there's such a huge difference in that between protest and rioting. They think it's the same. They deem it's the same. They classify it, but it's just, unfortunately, it's just not the same. It's just not. It operates differently. If you got a situation where there are people that are being harmed and service vehicles can't get to them, and I'm talking about not even agents but citizens, and they've got a road closed down, how are they supposed to get ambulance systems down there?
Well,
it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. And remember, I've never seen a crime for inciting a protest, but there is a crime for inciting a riot.
Absolutely. And we saw that there was a demonstration, and I call it a demonstration because it was peaceful, and it was in Fresno, downtown. Right by the federal building.
Oh,
it was
yeah,
probably
right
about
there.
a month and a half ago, right around there. And there was a lot of people down there. It was sizable, right? And so I was looking at it, and I was like, okay, I want to keep an eye on this just to see if it transitions from that protest to riot. Never did. Never did.
And I believe Fox News or KMPH 26 put something on. They had an individual who said Latinos for Trump or something. He got assaulted. And my whole thing is like, okay, my politics don't matter. My point is like, okay, you got assaulted.
Yeah.
But really, was it a good decision or good judgment to walk through that crowd with that? It's like, nah, you probably should have stayed on your side of the street and protested and spoke your mind over there. But still, if somebody assaulted him, they're in the wrong.
Yeah.
But remember, this is also too, we have to make good decisions. I mean, if I walk right through a crowd of a bunch of people and I shove a sign in their face saying, someone's liable to snap on me and come after me.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. As a God-fearing man, father, and sheriff, leader, all these different titles and hats that you wear, if you were going to give a piece of advice to somebody, rather they're, a CCW holder, they're a leader, in the vein of how do I, as a leader, be ready and be diligent to just keep my head on the swivel, what would that look like coming from you?
Well, I think you have to remember that, as a father, you're married with kids. You're the leader of your flock, so to speak. That's your flock. Yeah. And that you need to teach your kids about God. Mm-hmm. What faith or specific faith or, whether you're going to this church or whether you're going over here to this church, that's not my place. Everybody has their own religious beliefs. But to go to church.
Yes.
Whatever fits you, whatever you think is best for you and your family. Maybe it's something you were raised with, maybe it's not. But to find God. Mm-hmm. I see that more and more today. In fact, I think in the next Board of Supervisors meeting, if you have a chance to come on next Tuesday, August 19th, they're going to vote to put In God We Trust within the board chambers.
Nice.
So I think that's a good move. And really it doesn't mean that you're the leader / dictator of your family.
Correct.
It means that you're the leader. You're the one who's giving guidance. You're the father figure. You have a mother figure, and it's important for mom and dad to work together. Mm-hmm. It really is. But to be that sheepdog as the man, you're typically the sheepdog for your family until your boys get big enough and bigger than you and can
handle you,
can take you down.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is, and to bring God into the lives of your children is so important. At my house, we pray every night. Fantastic. In fact, just last night, my daughter had a late night class, and she knows we pray between 8 and 8:30. So she God bless her heart, Rose. She called and said, "Hey, have you guys prayed?" We said, "No, we're praying right now." So we did our nightly gospel reading, and we give a couple prayers, go around, we say what we're thankful for the day.
Yeah.
And no, it's not that mom took me in and out today. That does want something real. Real with some meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
But because I know how people are busy today, and you might not be able to have that sit down dinner and say grace and all that. Yeah. But I think it's important either in the morning or evening to pray together as a family, to find to have that faith in God. and go to a church, because a church is more than just a place to go to for an hour, say your prayers and say thanks and leave.
Check in the box.
It's community. It's those relationships that you build. And it also, teaches your kids, and we always learn things too as adults, but it really puts you in sometimes in the right frame of mind, after you go to church or after you go to an hour of prayer or something, you feel differently about things. But I think it's so important that we do this. And it's not just men, it's not just the guys, but women, the mothers too, but
Absolutely.
being good role models and parents working together. I know you and I talked on the phone a couple weeks ago, and sometimes I know people and I'll say, hey, can Matthew come over, or can so-and-so come over? We're going to go play baseball or do something.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I don't know. You're going to have to talk to the boss. And they automatically want to defer it over to their wife.
Yeah.
And I think that, well, I'm just asking, so why not just work with your wife and then get an answer back to me? Sometimes I think we push that off because we think, when the kid's available to go over for a play date or whatever.
Sure.
That's mom's role.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to deal with that. But I think it's important as dads and as father figures and as men that we get involved in stuff like this.
Absolutely.
Because, raising kids isn't just, say, mom's job and maybe dad goes out and, is, back in the day, the hunting or whatever, the gathers. But really, it's a combined effort, because children need a mother and a father.
Absolutely.
Equally. And there's different things that we bring to the table. Yeah. Whether it's, dads teaching, boys that masculine, the manly stuff, but also too, like, boys look to their mom to say, those are the things that they're going to look for at some point in a spouse or a significant other. And the same thing with girls and their dads,
Yeah.
Girls want dads to be the leaders, the protectors. And then if you fill that role, then hopefully your daughter will go out and find a good man to be a protector and someone to lead eventually her family.
That's so true, because their identity as children are really looked after, shaped, and molded in regards to that model that's in front of them. So they look at the mother, the sons look at the mother and say, okay, this is how mom takes care of dad, and vice versa, right? So we look at those relationships and how they're built and how they're structured, so that hopefully our plan as a parent, there's no guidebook to raising children, right? You go with what you know, you go with what you've been taught. So then at that point you advance forward in raising them, and the hope is that whatever kind of man or woman that you are as parents, that gets instilled inside of them. And I'm so glad to hear that you guys take that opportunity to recognize that you can't do life without God. God is essential. And however you interweave that into your family unit as a leader is so huge, because then that's going to be the staple. That's going to be the measuring stick of, this is how I want my family to be. And we need more of that to restructure our younger men in society, to help them to understand that this is it is a masculine thing. I tell people this all the time. If you want a difficult and challenging life, try serving God full time. And I don't mean just dipping your toe in the shallow end. I mean full bore. You will find you will get more opposition, because you will have a moral standard that is from God that is higher than most. That, in today's society, it rubs people the wrong way quite a bit. You're going to find that you're going to be in this smaller stable of people, and you have to be okay with that. I have this saying as well: learn how to become comfortable in discomfort while remaining focused. Put yourself in that situation where you're following God and doing what's right when everybody else isn't. You're going to see things go sideways pretty quickly. Not because it's a negative thing from your standpoint, but because there's opposition against it. Doing the right thing. Staying up and saying, hey, I want to pray with my kids and make sure that they're good. Hey, when nobody's looking, I'm doing the right thing, because that's going to come out. It's huge.
That's one thing you said there, Jimmy, is that when nobody's looking and nobody's paying attention, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times today, especially with social media, all the cameras, the online stuff, the internet and everything else, everybody wants to go out there and glamorize and publish and just post it up everywhere. Oh, look at me. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But what are they doing when nobody's watching? What are they doing when the cameras are off?
Correct. Correct.
That's the question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, because that's the salt in who you are as a man, as a leader, whatever your position is in life. It's going to be revealed. I had a pastor friend of mine say that whatever is done in the dark will always be revealed in the light. So whether it's positive or negative, it will be revealed, because the true nature of that person, of what they're curating, what they're stewarding, what they're manifesting in that moment, is always going to come out.
Well, and remember too that it's inevitable, it's unavoidable, and that one day we're all going to be off this earth. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to go somewhere, and somebody's going to know everything that we did, whether it was in the dark, the light, under this table, behind this curtain, whatever it is. He who sees all will know, and we'll have to answer for that.
That is correct. That is correct. John, thanks so much for coming out, man.
You're welcome.
It's been a delight. I really appreciate you, sir, in what you do for our county, for our county residents as a whole, and just thanks for taking the time. I know you're a busy man.
Oh, you're welcome.
And we hope to see you come back again, okay?
You invite me, I'll come back.
I will. I will. I'll love it. Guys, if you could, and give me that date again for the, it was at the commission's office. Is that what it was? Am I saying that wrong? For putting back In God We Trust.
Oh, that's the Fresno County Board of Supervisors.
Fresno County Board of Supervisors.
Almost like 99.9% sure it's going to be on the agenda for the upcoming meeting this Tuesday, August 19th.
Okay.
The meeting starts at 9:30 a.m.
9:30 a.m. If anybody wants any information about CCWs, go on the Fresno Sheriff's County website. There's plenty of information there for you. If you guys want, please make sure that you follow, wherever you're getting this podcast at, on any platform. We're on Prime now. So if you guys want to check us out on there, that would be great. I appreciate you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Hey, Alpha Men, if you're enjoying the show, check your comms and look us up at amenpodcast.cc, where you can find all of your favorite shows and new releases. Stay Alpha.